When we start looking from a global perspective as opposed to a purely European perspective, I think we gain much better insight into what language can be and into what humans can do with that language faculty. Most European languages are related to each other. Most of them are Indo-European. Even Polish and Dutch, which do not seem very similar, are still related. And that shows, I mean, okay, there is Finnish and Hungarian, which are not related, but even those have been influenced by, Finnish has been influenced by Swedish, and Hungarian has been influenced by Romanian and German, etc. So as soon as you go to East Asia or Africa or to the indigenous American languages, you find that they have all these phenomena that we wouldn't think of, that seem very exotic, frankly, to us, just like we seem exotic to them, I'm sure.
How is your Vietnamese now?
It's horrible. No, I mean, you seem to think that I was being ironic when I said that I didn't learn much, but really, as it happens, I spoke to my Vietnamese friend, my former teacher, this morning on Skype, and I told her something that I mentioned last night when I gave a talk here in the bookshop. And she said, no, that's wrong, that's wrong. Your idea is right, but you used the wrong words to give the example. I said, oh God, it's always like that. I have such trouble remembering the Vietnamese words and applying the Vietnamese grammar correctly, so it's really terribly hard. I think I should have started when I was 20. I mean, I'm over 50 now, it's just too late to learn Vietnamese, I guess. It's easier for me to understand how languages work because I can compare them with other languages. When I see Polish words and sentences, I can tell, hey, that looks like a German word, or that looks like a infinitive, but I don't know what it means most of the time. And the same with the Vietnamese. I can explain to you how the grammar works, more or less, but I can't talk. Basically, I learned in a very the way you learn it at school, from books. I learned about the grammar and about the vocabulary, and in a way that's a very old-fashioned approach to language learning, I guess. So that was not very effective. Then I tried to immerse myself into Vietnamese by going to Vietnam. But then my teacher there spoke very good English, and my host spoke English as well.
Switched.
Yeah, it's not as if the best way probably is to just force yourself to speak it from day one. But I guess I was just too much of a coward and I didn't do that. It has so much to fascinate. Every day I would run into new surprises, which is great. But then learning to apply them and actually memorize them, oh, that's a different matter. I mean, that's where the hedonism or the joy stops, and where the slug, I think is the word, where the hard work begins. Well, I want to hurry up. I want to be. I'm grown up now. I can do this faster, but you can't really. It's still a lot of work, and especially all the vocabulary. I mean, learning words is just hard. And even now that I'm in Poland, I hear people with first names, given names that are not familiar to me, like the director of character, who's called Przemek.
Yeah, exactly.
I find that a hard name to remember.
And Przemysław.
Yeah, and some names are longer, that's right. And Polish family names to me are hard to memorize. And learning a language is like learning thousands of new names, basically. And you know the concept. I mean, I know that a book is a book, but the Polish word I really have to, it's like książ. It begins with K-S-I-A with a tail, and then I get lost. Yeah. That's the trouble.
I mean, książka.
That's the one. When I was a little kid, when I was maybe 4 years old, I went to kindergarten, like most kids do. And then I knew that the teacher would talk to us in one way, and I would talk to my classmates in a different way. But at the time, I didn't realize that these were a national language and a regional language, or a standard language and a dialect, if you like.
Yeah.
It was only later on that I realized these are not just slightly different ways of talking, these are actually two systems, right? They're not arbitrary, they're actually systems. And when I was 12 or so, I started learning English and also French. It was compulsory at school. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, English and French have rules, and you can make lists of vocabulary. How's that with my regional language, with Limburgish? And I discovered it too has rules. It has endings, and it has genders, and it has certain phonological rules, you might say, like umlaut. And then it was only then that I really grasped the concept of what is a language. When I was 4 years old, I just went with the flow. I talked the way I was supposed to talk. And learning foreign languages really made me look at what I did myself. And I've never stopped since. I mean, even in Dutch, you can always run into new phenomena, new things that you have always used but you've never thought of. There's all this knowledge that you don't know you have. And learning foreign languages absolutely helps to make those discoveries. It's not necessarily important, but it's great fun. The languages themselves are all fine. And okay, languages that are very similar to Dutch and English, like German and even Spanish, they're less interesting in a way because they are not that surprising. Though when you get to know them better, there are always surprising facts and words, so it's still fine. Languages that are more different, like Swahili or Punjabi or Javanese, they have more to astonish you, and that is fun. But perhaps you're hinting at the fact that I'm sort of harsh on French in the book. I'm not sure if that's what you mean, but that has more to do with the linguistic culture. French has a very elitist, very hierarchic linguistic culture, where the literati and the intellectuals will sort of frown upon the language as it is spoken and written by ordinary people. And that is something I do not like so much. I'm from an egalitarian culture, and I like that in language. I like that for instance, in English, but also in many other languages. Accessible to everybody. And in English it's fine if you speak with a regional accent, or, I mean, I have a Dutch accent in my English, you have a Polish accent in your English, and that is acceptable. Whereas in French, people will say, no, I don't understand you, you have an accent, I do not want to understand you. Okay, I'm overstating this a bit, of course, but there is that difference in the cultures. English today is the most important lingua franca, right? I mean, you and I are speaking English now, even though it's not your mother tongue and it's not my mother tongue. And I think that works fine. I mean, that's a great asset. That's really something that we should cherish. And sometimes people say that Chinese will take over, Mandarin will take over because China is such a big country and it's developing very fast. But I'm not sure that will happen. And many linguists, really academic, scholarly linguists, believe that it will not happen because
hard to learn.
Not only that, that's also true, but for Chinese people, English is hard to learn. So, no, but the thing is, the world has now sort of vested interest in English because we have all put many hours of study into English, including the Chinese. Many Chinese people are learning English, Japanese people, Vietnamese people, African people, all over the world, people who have learned English. And there is not really a reason, at this moment, there's not really a reason to learn something else. Some people learn Mandarin because I think it's good for their career, and that's probably true, but that's a comparatively small group. It's like Windows. It's like Windows on the computer, I mean. Most of the world uses Windows, even though it's not necessarily the best operating system, but it's very hard for a competitor to beat it. So probably we're stuck with Windows for a long time. Same with English. English is certainly not perfect. It's pretty hard to pronounce. It has a lousy spelling, etc. But for better or for worse, it is what we have, and we don't feel like changing to something else. Okay, there is one possible reason, one possible event that might change this situation, and that is if machine translation, as you mentioned, if that really becomes very good. If I could speak Dutch to you and within a second you hear a good Polish translation and vice versa, that would be very useful. I mean, and if that were so, I'm not sure we would put much effort into learning English or any other language, because the problem of communication is no longer there. Now, I'm not sure if this will happen, but it's increasingly likely. As for the future of other languages, well, if English remains the world lingua franca, other languages might suffer for it, perhaps. Especially the very small languages may suffer, may even go extinct, perhaps, driven out by either English or by other big languages. But if machine translation really becomes very good and very successful, people may return to their national languages or regional languages, because that's fine. I mean, 90% of the time we speak to people in our surroundings. So, I mean, I'm fine with Dutch, you're fine with Polish. People in, let's say, Tanzania are fine with Swahili. It's only when you have to talk to foreigners, basically, that you need English. So as soon as that need disappears, many more languages will survive, I'm sure.